Okay, welcome again on this delegates. Welcome again, Ileana. May kindly say hi to the delegates. I just want to see if your audio as well, if they can hear you.
Sure. Yeah, let me know if you can hear me. Hello, everyone.
Okay, great. Yeah, they can hear you. Okay, great. Okay, thank you, delegates. Let's continue with our conference. Our next session is actually going to be done with Ileana. She'll be talking about disrupt or be disrupted. So yeah, over to you, Ileana.
Sure. Thank you so much, guys, and thank you for having me. Thank you for being here. I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can see the slides that I have prepared, and I will also introduce myself as we kick it off right now. So my name is Ileana. Ileana Stariva. I'm Bulgarian, hence a bit of a difficult spelling, Iliana. You've got my Twitter handle down here, so if you want to find me there, I'll tweet throughout the session. And just to let you know, I'm very excited to be here and to speak to you. I love doing public speaking in conferences. Obviously, in the COVID world, it's been a bit more difficult. So I'm delighted to have been invited and to be part of the conference today with you guys. Currently, I lead the PMO office for everything customer success and growth related for customer experience at MER and Cisco. I'm based in the Netherlands right now, and actually my background is pure marketing and PR. In fact, I started my career in public relations and especially in social media back in the day when people were still figuring out, how are we going to do social media for business? How does this work? Does it even work, etc. And then quickly after that, I transitioned into inbound marketing. So I'm sure a lot of you, since you work in marketing, are familiar with the term. I spent 5 years actually at HubSpot, where I consulted a lot of the partner agencies on how to drive inbound marketing for their customers, how to use the software, etc. So I spent a lot of time in that company and in that area. Super exciting for sure. Before I transition over at Cisco, where I've also held various positions. So my career has spanned from, PR and social media content creation to marketing strategy, consulting, program management, project management, partner channels. So lots of different areas. And my motto is always be learning. And that's why I'm excited to see you guys at this conference as well, because, it looks like you're also in it for the learning phase as well. So our session today is around disrupt or be disrupted. And I have 4 key areas that I want to cover with you. One, we'll start with technological transformation to cover the basis and the foundation there. Then we'll talk about digital disruption, because really that's the key topic of our session today. I also want to make sure I cover certain business models for you which relate to digital disruption. And then at the end, I'll leave you with some clear actions. I'm a firm believer that presentations and conferences should not only be what you learn and what you listen to, so really the theoretical part, but then also what you take from that and go ahead and do in your work, in your day-to-day life, so that in essence, you apply the learning that you get from the presentation you listen to. So really that's a key part for me, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. So let's get started. What's going on in the tech world? I'm sure a lot of you will agree that a lot has changed over the last few years, not just because of COVID, but really because of everything going over to digital. And in fact, I want to mention this here as we get started. We are on this journey together. Digital disruption and digital is affecting all of us in our work lives, in our daily lives. We're glued to our phones, we have multiple devices. This is happening at a pace that I believe none of us actually expected. So we're all trying to figure it out, whether personally or for business. And my call to action here to you is be patient with yourself. This is a learning journey. There are a lot of unknowns. So, and it's not just you who's going through a disruption. It's probably the person next to you doing the same exact thing. Now, that being said, you may be competitors and everything, so we might need to go at a faster speed, but we're all in this together. And we're all facing dramatic changes, right? Lots has altered in the market. As you all know, COVID, I think, has especially exacerbated digital disruption and everything moving to the cloud. Even if you look at companies who were previously opposed to people working from home, that's now just a reality because COVID has forced us to do so. And a lot of companies are noticing that there's actually no difference in the productivity of their employees whether they're working at the office or at home. Like for me, for example, I work at home and I'm a lot more productive and effective because I'm able to organize my time a lot better between the work that I have to do and also my family. So this type of online environment has really changed the way we do business, the way we communicate with each other, etc. My baby is just 1 year old and she's going to grow up with technology. But for some of you who are maybe not millennials or the generations before that, you knew the big Nokias, and it was amazing when you were able to actually call somebody. And I remember to this day, when I was 7 years old, actually, I remember my mother brought home the first computer we ever had in the house. And it was like this big thing with the big screen that you had to put on a table and the big box there where you put the CD and things like that inside. And I remember I was so excited seeing this and figuring out to work with the mouse and the keyboard and then putting in the CD there to play Age of Empires. And my cousins who didn't have a computer in their house, they used to come to our house and play together Age of Empires and learn all these things. So it's like, these are type of stories we can tell, and most of us can tell because, all of this was new to us. But, generations of children growing up now, to them, technology is just a norm. Online is just a norm. So in essence, in business, you have to create an environment to drive disruption and to accelerate disruption, because really you're forced by an environment that is completely digital or more or less just online, and you kind of have to do that to be able to drive growth. But what's really key is how you drive customer value, and you see that in the presentation throughout. Everything boils down to your customers, their needs, and how you're solving them. And that's from any aspect of the business, whether you're in marketing, in sales, in customer success, etc. It's all about your customer. Because if you solve your customers' problems, if you drive value for your customers, business outcomes will just come naturally. And business outcomes is what's going to enable you to drive growth and what's going to enable you to be disruptive as well. But to do all of that, for you guys as marketeers, it's really important to make sure you optimize channels. So really where your customers are, to be available, to be contactable there. So really where they are, that's where you need to be. You also need to be agile to adapt to change, because we all know how in marketing especially, there's always a new tool, there's always a new social platform, there's always something new coming our way that we need to evaluate whether it makes sense to use based on whether our customers are there. And then the last part here is innovation, because without innovation, you can't stay relevant. And that goes into figuring out what are the new technologies that will make us more productive, that will make us more competitive. Those technology can be internally facing to your operations or the way you do business or the way you run your marketing activities. But those could be also externally facing to customers with regards to tools and social media platforms, etc. One thing I want you to remember is this. Your existing customers are your biggest driver of growth. And this is not something that's coming from me, it's actually coming from HubSpot. I mentioned I spent about 5 years there, and in my last year at HubSpot, they came up with this whole notion of the flywheel, which we'll cover a little bit later. But in essence, the idea is that your install base, your current customers, are extremely important to you as a business, because they're the ones who will recommend you, who will be the ones speaking positively about you, promote you, and they'll be the ones essentially bringing new leads over to you. So what does that mean from a marketing perspective? Well, it's not just about generating new customers and helping sales close them. It's really about figuring out what are good ways for us to be in touch with our install base, to be in touch with our current customers, to continue providing a great experience to them, and figuring out how can they support us in ensuring that we continue to drive growth, we continue to bring new customers in, and etc. And that's why this is now a flywheel. So remember this, because we'll come back to this again and again throughout the presentation. It really goes down to what your customers need and how you are putting them front and center of each and every one of your activities. Now let's talk a little bit about digital disruption. Now, I'm sure you all guys know what digital disruption is, and you've seen a number of examples there, right? Whether that's Facebook, Netflix, and etc. But what's really interesting to me is that digital disruption is not stopping. It's actually escalating more so. And I'll show you a couple of stats here so you can see that. This is coming from our Cisco annual internet report from last year, where it says that in the next 2 years, in 2023, actually it's not even 2 years because we're almost at the end of 2021, there will be 29 billion devices expected to access the internet. That's almost 4 devices per person. Now, if we were face-to-face here, I would have asked you to raise your hand if you guys already have 4 devices or maybe 5 and etc., right? So if you're doing it in the background, that's great. But I have a work laptop, a private laptop, I have my phone, and then I have a million other type of devices which somehow connect to the internet, whether that's Alexa, whether that's Philips Hue for all the lights here, like a lot of other areas there, not to mention what my husband has. So in general, in our house, there's definitely probably at least around 15 devices somehow connected to the internet. And that's just one household. And when it comes to business, what I find really interesting here is that obviously the mention here is that disruption is at a tipping point, and that industry leaders believe that 40% of the current top companies and incumbents will be displaced by digital disruption just in the next 5 years. And particularly prone to digital disruption are industries like finance, for example. I know Bitcoin is a bit wonky and we don't know what's going to happen there, but certainly people are investing in cryptocurrencies. And there's certainly a move where we're seeing, like here, for example, in the Netherlands, nobody's using cash. Everything is card-based and everything is moving online and into applications. Like payments are going through applications. They're not going through cash and etc. People buy things secondhand on Facebook Marketplace. They send each other tikis, for example. Here's a tiki. I send you a link. You pay me through the link. So it's like a lot of things are moving in that space. And of course, in other areas as well, especially around media and communications, we know what Facebook has done to us, right? Like everything evolves around Facebook. Facebook has fundamentally changed the way we communicate with each other and we connect with each other. Likewise, Netflix, yet another example on how we consume media, right? Like, I mean, I don't even remember last time I went to the movies because I have Netflix and I can stream it at home when I want to, not based on the time the cinema is providing to me. So a lot's going on in the sense of how businesses are being disrupted. And I think that fundamentally the changes that organizations are facing boil down to a few things, right? With the move to digital and online, companies are moving over to figuring out how to provide products, actually turning them into services and selling software, right? All of this is moving to the cloud, and all of this is driven by analytics. In a digital world, whether we're marketing or sales or whatnot, data is extremely important because it allows you to make informed decisions, and especially it allows you to understand your customers' movements. What are they engaging with, especially when it comes to your marketing content, for example? What are they not engaging with, right? What are they finding useful? What are areas you should be answering their questions, but you may not be at this stage? And that's why in the middle of this graph, you see life cycle. And we'll come to that a little bit later, but life cycle is extremely important in today's business because it's really about the journey your customers go through in every touch point with you. From the first point they ever talk to you or visit your website, from the first time they ever talk to a salesperson, to when they actually end up purchasing, they start using your products or services, etc. That life cycle, you really need to figure out how you map it out and understand how does it tie into any of these pieces here, right? From a software perspective, from services in the cloud, and then the data that's actually underlining each of these and driving the data points that allow you to be more effective, more efficient, and drive better customer value and outcomes for your business. Now, all of these dramatic forces, though, that have been changing in the recent years with the escalation of COVID are really happening and are affecting businesses. And I think businesses do understand that, and they're trying to transform with it. In fact, they're spending $2.3 trillion on digital transformation as expected by 2023. But what's really concerning here is that 80% of those transformations actually fail. 80% is a lot. Like if you actually calculate the number, that would scare you. And what are some of the reasons for that? Well, it's lack of speed. And that's why I'm glad to see you guys here combined with the last point around skills gap, because you have to jump on the bandwagon of certain things and you have to be willing to actually learn and be better and innovate and try new things out. Because otherwise, if you don't have that type of a mindset, then you become part of those 80% that fail. But the one that really concerns me is the one in the middle around complexity. And I've seen that in probably each and every organization that I've worked with all the partners that I used to consult in the past and customers that I used to work with. Organizational complexity internally really slows down transformation. Internal processes or lack thereof are really the killing point of anything that's disruptive or fast, because organizational complexities don't allow you to make quick and agile decisions, and they certainly do not allow you to execute quickly, adaptively, and in line with all that's happening out there. So it's really that mindset, but then it's also ensuring that your internal organizational environment allows you to be able to transform and really grow in essence. Another challenge I want to add here, especially for you guys, because you work in marketing, is the area of tools out there. It's actually crazy to see how much tools are available for marketing guys, whether that's around advertising or content creation, social media, data management, etc. It's a lot. And this is an infographic that Scott Brinker puts together from Chief Martech. He publishes it every year pretty much. I actually haven't seen the one from this year, but this one is from April 2020. And it says the Martech 5000, but actually it's 6,000 tools that you can see on this slide. And you can't even read them, right? You don't even know which ones are there because there's just so many, which makes it really difficult for you to decide which one is the best, but then especially more so to figure out how can these tools speak to each other. Because if you don't have that all in one, whether that's through APIs or whatnot connection, it's really difficult for you to not gather the data points because you get them from each individual tool, but then to really connect the dots and to make the connections between those. And what are they really telling you about your customers and about the activities you're doing and what's working and what's not? So it's that collective data intelligence that's lacking whenever you use various different tools that don't speak to each other. That's why companies like HubSpot have done really well in the past, because they've become the all-in-one tool. And so if it's one tool for different areas of the business, it's all there and the data is stored in the same place. That's why a lot of companies try to invest in CRM. But once you have a CRM, if it doesn't speak to a marketing tool, then it becomes really challenging to understand how you're managing those relationships or managing these customers that you have in the CRM, dependent on the activities you're driving in your marketing tool. The other thing I want to mention specifically around digital disruption is that AI is here to stay. And I know artificial intelligence is still a buzzword for a lot of companies out there, and they're still trying to figure it out. Of course, it really boils down into the data that we're talking and the data-driven decisions. But what's good to see here from PricewaterhouseCoopers is that by using AI, you are able to drive a better customer experience. And as I said before in this presentation, it's really key to figure out how you're going to drive customer value through an optimized lifecycle for your customers, because that's what's going to allow you to drive growth. And AI also helps you improve business decisions, innovate on products, etc. A lot of benefits there. Another buzzword that's been up and running, and I wanted to make sure I mention it here, even though the area of digital disruption trends is actually immense. I haven't taken all of them, I've just taken the ones that I believe are key. So the other one is augmented reality, especially in consumer businesses. This is coming a lot. And I've actually used that because we bought a house last year and we had to figure out how to furnish it, etc. My husband's a really good designer, internal designer actually, not by profession, just by vision. So we did use some of the apps to sort of imagine, okay, well, this is the space that we have. What would it look like with this sofa or with this sofa? Certainly, this is very popular when it comes to makeup and fashion and etc. The other one that I wanted to mention is geofencing. And that one actually scares me. And it is expected to grow also by a lot, by 2.4 billion in the next year and a half, less so. And this one is really about, say, you imagine you're on the street, right? And you're going to work, for example. And for some reason, you often purchase from a particular supermarket, you buy online from them or whatever, so they store your preferences, they know what are things you like. And you also have your location turned on your phone. So as you're walking and you're nearing work, but there's also your favorite supermarket around the corner, they spot you that you're just out there, very close by, 5 steps away from the door, and they ping you that, oh, you know what, we have a 2-for-1 deal on, I don't know, let's say your favorite croissant. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, that sounds nice. Then you go inside and you're like, well, just before I start work, why don't I grab a croissant with my coffee, and then I'll just happily start my day. And this is actually happening in reality, and it's quite scary. I have my location turned off on my phone because essentially companies now know everything about you, where you are, what you're buying. Google is one particular example there, who have also used artificial intelligence a lot, just by search intent. So you type one word on Google and bang, you've got suggestions, and most likely the first one is actually the one you wanted to search for, because you search day in and day out, so many times a day that Google very well knows what you're trying to find there. It is scary, certainly is, but it's the world we live in. And so if you want to disrupt, then you're going to have to embrace it. And speaking of embracing, I think you guys will agree with me that we actually, even though I said we are on this journey together, it's actually a race. A race underpinned by COVID that has escalated and made things move a lot faster than they did. We were still on this journey, but now we're racing. And for you to be successful here, you really need to make sure you leverage insights and analytics, because they're the ones that give you the ability to make those data-driven decisions, to be in control of what's happening in your business and how can you drive more value to your customers. Using tools to help you automate things, allow you to innovate, allow you to be more efficient, allow you to remove that complexity that happens internally in organizations that stop you from being truly innovative and transformative. And finally, lifecycle is what allows you to accelerate the value for your customers, the value that they're getting from your products and from your services. They're paying for something and they want to make sure they're getting the most out of it. So really, the lifecycle is key and underpins everything you do. Now remember these three, because they will then, in essence, also underpin how you drive a better business model for your organization to make sure that you succeed in the environment that we live in today. Speaking of business models, that's the next section that we're moving into, and I want to start us off here with a quote. That quote comes from Jeffrey Collin, who's author of Disruptive Marketing, and he says, "Conversations win over hard selling. Our world is a place where users create the best content about brands. People focus on feelings, and analytics with creativity are the cornerstones of growth." Now, if you've paid attention so far to my presentation, you'll see that we've really nailed those points as well already. Everything is really about customer value. Consumers have become so empowered with all the tools that they have, and the smartphone is in their hand, and social media, etc., that it's really them that are creating the image of your brands. It is the content that they create about you that really create the overall view in the eyes of others of how good your company is or not. We know that consumers can be extremely vocal when they're not happy. They take issues over to Facebook pages and they demand results and response right away. The other part here is around analytics. We mentioned this already a lot of times, guys, with regards to data and the tools that can allow you to do that, because that can allow you to get the analytical insights that you need to drive creative solutions, creative transformations that will then, in essence, drive growth. Now, when it comes to business models, what's extremely important to you in marketing, and here we're getting back to the flywheel that I mentioned a few slides ago from HubSpot, the way they transformed as a company, and in fact, a lot of their customers are transforming that way, including their partner agencies, is moving away from the funnel and into the flywheel. So originally, and that still happens, right? I wouldn't say it's completely gone away, but it's more of a mind shift. When we say funnel versus flywheel, the funnel was really you guys in marketing generating the leads So a big funnel, lots of leads. Sales will then evaluate them and start working them to turn them into customers and close them into actual deals, right? So the customers. It was a funnel because you'd start with a lot and then you end up with a little less. Now, what HubSpot had said, as we mentioned before, is that this is now moving away from just being linear into an actual circle, a flywheel, where the customers are in the middle and they're no longer that small dot over there, because it's really them who are driving the growth across. So those customers can recommend you to friends and families and etc. They can write positive reviews about you. They can write great content about you. And then without even your expectation, you end up with a new lead that then goes through the whole sales process and etc. Right? Same goes to existing customers that you guys as marketers work with to create case studies or references, etc., that they can serve in essence to drive that brand image, to drive a good reviews for you, to ensure that new people understand how your products work and the value that they provide, so that they can make that decision themselves whether they want to purchase or not. And in fact, a lot of the decision making now happens through research, through speaking to friends and colleagues, etc., not necessarily through speaking to a salesperson. Why? Well, because there's so much content out there and people feel empowered to go and figure it out themselves. Like we are in the process now of potentially purchasing solar panels because with the whole gas and power crisis that's happening now, we're figuring out what are good ways for us, especially because we drive an electric car, to make sure that in the long run we are sustainable, and we also lowering our bills when it comes to electricity with the car that we have. And so we are researching the vendors, we're researching the solar panels, and even though we had 2 companies here coming in and advising us, the decision will really be based on the YouTube videos that we've seen, on the reviews we've read about the companies, on the reviews we've read about the different social panels that are out there. So it's really, we are doing that research on our own, and we'll make the decision on our own, and we're not going to rely on a salesperson to educate us. Now, going into another, what I would call a bit of a business model or a business shift in mindset, is the customer lifecycle that we mentioned a little bit before, but this is what we use at Cisco. So everything we do in the company is based around the racetrack, as we call it. And this is the racetrack, and in essence is the customer experience. So it's each and every touch point that our customers go through, from the very first time they hear about Cisco, decide to look into Cisco products and services, to when they actually speak to our sales guys, to when they end up purchasing and start using the products, and ideally start loving it and recommending it. And again, as you saw before in the flywheel, this is not linear. This doesn't stop. That customer may end up buying more from us, may end up recommending us, and etc., as long as we've ensured that we've driven a great customer experience. And why I've included this in the business model sections is because each and every of those stops across the life cycle is very strategically analyzed and planned. So where do we provide value, and how do we provide value to our customers for every of these touch points, so that the experience goes and runs smoothly? Will there be problems along the way? Of course. But that's why we have teams, and that's why we have strategies to make sure we solve for those. And in fact, if you think about the big guys who have disrupted industries in the last few years, like the Facebooks out there with the comms industry, or Netflix with movies and TV and etc., what they figured out is really what are the experience that customers want to go through, what's making them inefficient or slower, what are the gaps that they have in the world that currently exists, and that's how they've in essence managed to disrupt. And disruption has happened a lot through tools and analytics, right? And that's why I wanted to show you guys again the top tools that we've seen specifically for you when it comes to marketing. And what you see here is the top few ones are really based around figuring out how to drive that better experience for our customers and to drive those analytics, from an experience platform to marketing analytics and customer data platform. So it's all data, customer, and experience. Because this is really the essence of disruption and how you want to drive it. It's really based on what your customers need and how you're able to solve those needs and to drive value. And a lot of this also needs personalization. I've purposely included this here because our customers are so demanding nowadays. In essence, they don't want to waste time. And your role as marketing guys is to ensure that every touch point they have with you and every content that they consume, in essence, solves their problem without them having to click around and search around. That's the thing that's probably most frustrating for anybody who's trying to right now make a decision whether to buy from you or not. If their experience is slowed down, if it's just too difficult for them to really find what they need, they're just going to go away and move to another vendor or provider. And when it comes to personalization, this is proven facts here with yet another research that it just drives better customer experience. It ensures that conversion rates are higher, visitors feel better engaged. It just allows you to, again, drive that growth that we mentioned in the beginning. And customers are so impatient that 82% of them want an immediate response whenever they have a questions. I mentioned before they would go to Facebook pages or any type of bots. This is where conversational marketing comes into play because they want that response now. They don't have time and they don't want to actually remember to have to do something. They have a problem now and they want to solve it now. And that's extremely tough on you guys because you have a hard job there to satisfy frustrated existing customers or those prospects that you want to make a decision if they want to buy now. And sales will tell you if they want to buy now, I want to sell them to you now. So you kind of press from all edges there to ensure that, in some shape or form, you are driving that customer experience or that prospect experience in a way that satisfies their needs here and there and in the moment. And what I'll finish off here too in mentioning is that social media has definitely stayed. I told you that I started my career in PR and especially social media, and I remember how companies were still like, no, I'm not sure social media is going to stay, or, how do we use this thing, LinkedIn, okay, well, is that for business? And what about Twitter? And how do we do that? And what about Facebook? Facebook was so up in the air back in the days, and look at it now. I mean, if you're not on Facebook, you're basically not found. I mean, there are businesses who just run on Facebook and don't have a website, and that's enough. So it's really interesting to see how just in the matter of a few years, things have changed so much and how many companies have been disrupted just because they haven't stayed quick enough and jumped on the bandwagon of various tools or various technology that were demanded by their customers and by the industry itself. So what I want you to think about here is that your business model should really be driven by your customer needs and the way you drive value to them. Because it's your customer that defines your business model. But you have to be quick enough and agile enough to not get left behind. And that's the challenge you're facing here. How are we quick enough? Then how are we avoiding our internal complexities and lack of knowledge or skills there to ensure that we can be fast enough and we can be there for customers the way they need us. And I'm not talking for all the customers, but really think about the ones that are the innovators there, the ones who are willing to adopt new technologies quickly enough. So we've covered lots around transformation, digital disruption, and how your customers really define what your business model should be. We're coming to our last section where I wanted to leave you off with some very clear action items, as I promised. And they boil down to 3 things. Start with your why, know your industry, and understand your customers. I'll go through each one of these in a bit more detail. So starting with your why. Now, it's really important to understand what is it that your boss wants to achieve, because ultimately your CEO defines the vision for the company and where you're going. Now, you can be part of that definition, of course, and you should be part of that definition, and also should be part of the definition of the goals that the company wants to achieve when it comes to growing. But you need to very much understand those and why are they important, because you need to figure out also how you're going to contribute. So how are we going to make sure that your company is going to grow by X by next year? And now is a really good time to be part of that conversation because we're setting ourselves for a new annual year. So it's a time of year where we analyze what happened in the last 11 months, what went well, what didn't, what do we want to kill. I'm a firm believer that if something doesn't work, just don't spend time and effort and money on it, kill it. move on to the next thing, or focus on the areas that do work. So figure out, as a marketing professional, how are you going to be able to contribute to where your company is going. As part of that, make sure you understand what's happening out there in the industry, right? There's plenty of companies that can provide a ton of market research, but you can do a lot of that also yourselves on Google. And especially, a lot of companies forget that you can talk to your customers, you can survey them, and you can especially talk to sales. Your sales teams have so much knowledge when it comes to your customers because they talk to them day in, day out, right? Again, if you have tools, leverage those tools, analyze them on a regular basis, monthly, quarterly, etc. Use that data analytics, use those insights that you already have to know what's going on there. Because if you understand what's happening in your own company and then overall in the industry, then you'll be so much better at spotting a potential trend that you can jump on that'll then allow you to disrupt. That's how Facebook did it, and that's how Netflix did it. They spotted a trend out there, a need that the customers had, something that was of interest, and they went on and then jumped on the bandwagon and they did it. And finally, speak to your customers, understand them. We get so bogged down into our daily operations that we often forget that we should be talking to customers. We should interview them. We should check in with them. We should be like, well, how are you doing? And what do you like about the products? And what are some areas we should improve? We need to be getting that feedback constantly. You hear that a lot from CEOs and people in the executive suite who try and talk to customers more and more often, even though their daily calendars doesn't allow them to. And they do that for a reason, because that's really how you learn what's going on out there, what's working, what's not. And don't forget that that's a really great opportunity for you to figure out a way, if you haven't yet, how can our existing customers be that driver of growth for us in the future? So figure out how to analyze their behavior, figure out how to involve them. You'd be surprised to see how many of your customers would be willing to be part of your content campaigns, be part of videos, be part of conferences, etc. They want to be part of this, right? They know that will be good for you, that will be good for them. Perhaps they want to co-create something with you. So why not leverage all of this? In essence, it can be even free. So make them your hero, right? If you work in marketing, I'm sure you've heard of storytelling and how important that is, and etc. You need that hero in the middle, right? Like you need that person or company that can really elevate your brand, like can elevate your image. And the easiest way to find that hero is your existing customer install base. So go talk to them, figure out ways to tell their stories as part of being with you and as part of having purchased your services and your products. So, here's my challenge to you. Take the time now at the end of the year to analyze your current marketing goals and activities. How did you track for this year? What went well, what didn't? Look at what your business is going to want to achieve next year, next 5 years, right? What are the future needs? How do you align to all of that? And then embrace technology. You really don't have a choice but to use those smartphones and use those social networks and use AI and personalization and all those cool tools out there. Now, obviously being smart and making the decision what really works for our business. Don't just buy a tool because it's the next thing out there. Buy it to having made sure that this is the right thing based on the growth that you want to drive, based on your goals. And this is the right network where your customers will really be active on, not just because it's the latest thing. Like, for example, TikTok may not work for you in your business. That's totally fine. You don't have to use it if it doesn't make sense. But really embrace technology because it's going to allow you to drive that better customer experience. Focus on the life cycle. Focus on the experience of your customers in each and every step, touch point that they have with you. It'll make you a lot more relevant to them. It'll make you a lot more successful in your ability to drive customer results and value for them. So really, we are on this race together. It's a journey, but I would say we're all racing towards driving better customer outcomes, towards embracing technology and digital disruption. And it's not impossible. It's all about persistence, and it's all about keeping the practice and keeping going and being interested and being open. And I'll just reiterate that you guys are already a step ahead just because you're in this session, just because you're doing this conference, and you're investing time in your learning and in your growth and development and in yourselves. So thank you again. And I think at this stage, if you have time, we'll open up for Q&A. Thanks for the claps and the hearts. I think we may have just run out of time, actually.
Yes, I can just see some loves, likes, and stuff. Maybe there's a question later. I can't see a question there, Ileana. Or else you can perhaps just leave the name that you use on LinkedIn, Ileana. Okay, I can see something there. Let me just quickly check.
Sure.
Okay, there's a question from Masingita. She's saying, what does it mean for the way the business is structured if one takes a flywheel approach?
Yeah, sure. And that's a good question. I think when it comes to the flywheel, it's, especially if you work in marketing, it's a couple of things to think about. So previously as a marketing department, you would really just be focused on leads, right? Generating new leads. So new people coming our way, how we're driving new business from those that do not know us. And when it comes to the flywheel, it's actually figuring out a way where you already have an existing customer base. You already have people who have purchased from you and who are using your products and services. So how do we focus on, one, driving a really good experience for them to make sure that they continue staying with us? And two, how do we work with them to figure out how can they become new drivers for new people who come and purchase from us, right? So if it's an existing customer right now who is happy with you, how can you work with them to create some stories which you can share on your channels or their channels so they can start driving new interest to you, essentially? So that's really the essence of it. And it's really also from a strategic perspective where your CEO starts spending a lot more time with your existing current base versus just internal operations, where we know that executives get bogged down with a lot. So it's really that listening mechanism that you need to build in more and more within the flywheel.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's no more question there. Okay, thank you so much for the presentation, Liana. Delegates, let's move on to the last session of the conference. Greg Jameson is waiting for us there. So yeah,
Thank you, guys.
See you on the next session. Thank you so much, Liana.
Take care. Bye-bye.